This is just so much different, and I don't even fucking know if this mic is working right. So, yeah. Give me a second here. I apologize. I very rarely come on here, and clearly the graphics have changed since my last time doing a live stream on here. So this is so bad because I don't know how to edit. So this is pretty bad. Okay. Anyway, how's everybody? I got my lights lit so it's not dark and gloomy. Anyway, I've had this idea for a while. I'm going to straighten this out because it's going to irritate the shit out of me otherwise. Okay. I'm going to burp and I apologize. Excuse me. So when Mom passed away, those of you who were there know that I gave her eulogy. And I don't know any other way to explain it other than the truth is I have looked for an opportunity for public speaking. I'm not that, I don't think that far outside the box that I can automatically come up with a great place that I can volunteer to speak other than doing an open mic. And I'm not that funny to where I could do an open mic and do this. I don't think it would get very good feedback. Anyway, so I couldn't wait to do Mom's eulogy. And I had written it out and, had the notes and everything. But it was so uncomfortable to read it. So I just kind of looked at it so I knew that I was in the area that I wanted to be in with the stuff I wanted to talk about. I've taken one speech class my sophomore year in high school, which I barely did well in because my self-esteem was garbage and I never felt comfortable speaking in front of people. That is no longer the case 97% of the time. There are a few people in this world who, when they are in my vicinity, I get very uncomfortable and I don't speak right. It's either someone I have a crush on, so I'm trying to think of last time it's happened. It's been years since I got tongue-tied in front of another person due to attraction. Also, someone in authority, if I don't know where their authority begins and ends, I might freeze up. What's my point? See, this is okay. My cat's going behind the blinds if you hear clanking. I can't get motivated to do this unless I'm stoned. I can't speak in full, clear, concise sentences when I'm stoned. So it's a lose-lose situation. Anyway, when I did my mom's eulogy, a lot of people came up to me afterwards, some family members, and made a comment that they didn't know XYZ about my parents' marriage and were, intrigued by it. Cat behind the mini blinds, or vertical blinds. So I thought, well, shoot, if that's true, I mean, that is kind of my mom's thing. She never talked about anything. Brian and I didn't care because, well, first of all, the time that it happened, which my parents got divorced in 84, and us being teenagers, we were going to get attention any means necessary. What is your problem, girlfriend? She keeps I don't know. I'd be freaked out if I thought it was she was like going after something, but it's literally, what are you doing? It's literally minus 26 outside. What are you doing? Why are you being weird? Stop, okay? Please. And don't knock into that. Okay. So I got to thinking, a lot of my flashbacks came back. Like my Aunt Pat told me that earlier this year, I don't know, I don't remember this happening, so it could have been when she was still living with my brother, but mom broke down and cried about my dad. Um, I think it was a combination of probably drinking too much and, you know, going downhill and having her dementia stuff. But I always knew that the reason, well, I didn't, that's not true. A lot of things have come clear over my adult years. I used to, my dad loved playing the victim. We never really got any true story out of him other than he was this poor gay man whose mother made him marry a woman, and because she wasn't going to have a gay son. Well, she had two, one who died of AIDS. So, um, but I don't know what made my dad like narcissistic. Like I joke about being narcissistic, but and other than just being just loving I shouldn't say in love with myself, but loving myself, I don't think I'm truly up my own ass. I do joke about it though, because it's fucking funny. My dad, however, I know it's not because he's gay, but he is up his own ass. And he's the victim of a marriage. Now, just as a frame, okay, you marry a Catholic woman who was raised in a very, very Catholic home, okay? There were three boys out of the five girls. Whoops, sorry. And girls weren't to know things about things. You didn't talk about anything. Your goal was to get married, get the fuck out, have kids, stay quiet, stay out of the nest, do your thing. Well, my mom, and I'm jumping ahead, but I'll back up more than I want to. My mom was the black sheep from the beginning. It's probably because she was one of the middle children. The other one's a freak too, but she's still married. And I apologize for the furnace. It's just loud. I was going to turn it down, but with it being so cold, it's not worth it. Anyway, so my mom fell. I'm going to try to start from the beginning because I'm all over the place right now and I'm getting amped. So I got to focus. Maybe I'll have a cigarette because this is really an interesting story. And if anybody's even remotely interested, I know my cousin Mike was. So if someone's watching this and is related to or knows my cousin Mike, give him this link because I know he's interested in the story. Um, since I'm on camera, I'm going to have a cigarette so you don't have to worry about getting secondhand smoke. And if you don't like watching people smoke, close your eyes. Anyway, so my mother was number 4 of 8 kids, right? Right? I suddenly can't do math. I'm right. um, there were 9, but we all still mourn. And I'm being flip. I almost went down the flip alley. Sometimes family jokes need to stay family jokes because the masses won't get it. Anyway, there were 9. God rest her soul. Anyway, uh, why? So my mom was number 4. So the first 2 were my Aunt Peggy and my Aunt Marianne. And then they were, God, older kids. when my Uncle Jim came along. So they were probably between the ages of 8 and 10. I mean, they were like right 9 months apart in age, honestly. But I don't know the exact numbers. Um, and then my Uncle Jim came along, and then almost the exact same amount of time, 9 months, give or take one or two, my mom came along. So you had these two older girls, the junior, the boy, which in Catholic families, you already know, is put on the pedestal, gets the throne. Girls, scullery maids. So, and then my Aunt Pat came along not quite 9 months later, maybe closer to a year and a half ish. Not much, maybe a year. Um, and then my Uncle Terry, my Aunt Sheila, and her twin, and my Uncle Joe. God rest her soul. It's not my joke, it's Sheila's joke, it's her twin. I'm not saying another word. Anyway, so out of all those kids, skinny, stick, little Irish girls, Irish, Scotch, Dutch girls, my mom was the round one. She was the one, I mean, she was beautiful. Don't get me wrong. My mom, you know, if you look, go on my Facebook, my mom was gorgeous. But out of all the kids, she was the one with the round face. She was the one with the chubby cheeks. She was the one with, she was just round compared to everybody else, but still the cutest. I'm sorry. And no, it's not because I'm biased. My mom just was the best one. Um, hence me. Jesus. So anyway, she got bullied by her older brother, who was, the prince, until he fell from his throne, but by his own recognizance. Um, and my mother wanted to be like her older sisters and attractive as her sister Pat, and um, as likable as her sister Sheila. Her little brothers loved her, but her older brother ridiculed her. So she had low self esteem, being the family fat kid, and um, you know, not as good as everybody else. And her brother laying this foundation of shit. And then she didn't even go. So everybody in my mom's family went to Cathedral. Cathedral opened my Aunt Marianne's is, oh God, I want to say senior year, because I used to anyway, have her senior year yearbook, and that was when the high school that I went to opened. Uh, my cat's freaking out. So she went there. Peggy went there. They were both May Queens, which at the time was a big deal. Kind of like how maybe prom would have been to us. If Do we really care about prom, or was it just me that didn't care? But no, being May Queen in a big Catholic family, you're doing a tradition, okay? So Marianne's May Queen, Peggy's May Queen. They're, you know, perfect in the eyes of the parents, in my mom's eyes. And then mom was so just over the pressure of trying to be like them and then being beat down at the same time. So she went to Duchenne, and she's the only one. I do, I wish I had been old enough to have acknowledged that huge thing and talked to my grandpa about it, because that had to have been more expensive than Cathedral. Uh, but so if anybody, I don't know, I'd love to hear that story. Mom went to Duchenne. Pat went to Cathedral. She was, were you a cheerleader? Um, Terry went. He went to tech for a while, but I don't know that I ever got the full story behind that. I don't know if it was a summer school thing or if it was so he could get, because there was a different type, it was to get you into a trade, like a trade school. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. My whole point is they all went to cathedral, except mom. Somehow, I think she already knew who my dad was. I forgot. I think my dad was friends with this bitch my mom was friends with. I call her bitch because I have my reasons. And so my mom being, if she was anything like me, and I was obnoxious, and if she was like the pure, I'm assuming, there's chances are good she was more like me than I care to know. But she, for the sake of my sanity, we'll say she was the pure version of what I was when I was in high school. And she chased my dad, and he ended up taking her on dates, I guess. I never really asked a whole lot of questions about that. I never asked mom a whole lot of questions about anything when it came to her. I mean, I tried to find out about her childhood and stuff. Her answer was always, I don't remember, which I tested that theory and knew it was a lie because I can still remember everything. And it's because I chose to. So, anybody like my mom or my brother or my ex husband who chooses not to remember things, I feel sorry for you because there's good stories like this one. So, anyway, so yeah, mom had mad crush on my dad. And to be fair, some of the pictures that I've seen, they're not like shiny, gross yearbook pictures, but like taken with Polaroid. My dad was a good looking dude. I really look like him too, I have to admit. And I'm not saying that because I'm gorgeous. I'm saying it because it's true that I'm gorgeous. But anyway, so uh, I think my grandma was just glad that this woman wouldn't go away. And I do believe this family tale that she drug him to the jeweler. That was always the way I heard it told. Will you stop it? I'm trying to film. She's like obsessed with a clean litter box. It's like she's in there building sandcastles. It drives me insane. Knock it off, girl. Anywho, so shh, thank it. So yeah, so grandma. Okay, I haven't lit this. Grandma took dad to the jeweler. I'd love to show you the ring, but she has long since hawked said ring. I forgot why. You just body slammed my chair, dude. She needed to pay for something. I'm wondering if it was okay. Well, we can get to that another time. Another story. We're talking about this one. So yeah, they got married. Um, I don't know if it was true for the older sisters, but the younger ones all had, their marriages at the cathedral and then reception at the house. My mom got married on June 21st, I think. No, that's the day she died. Shut up. Whoops. It was June 27th, June 26th. I don't know. That's my parrot. Say hi. Thank you. Anyway, this I can't do the camera thing. So anyway, so yeah, they got married, hottest day of the year. He was still in the Navy. And from my vantage point, yes, what they say about Navy men are true. Not all Navy men, but probably the bulk. Anywho, uh, so he was on the ocean. I don't want to say overseas. I don't think he was docked anywhere. And she lived with my grandparents. They used to live in San Francisco when they first got married, and then he got deployed, I guess. Um, I assume it was the last leg of his uh, service. I don't know. And he came back after I was born. I was like 6 to 8 months old. And from what I gather, he didn't think much of me. I think he saw me more as an annoyance. And yeah, he was not ever really good to me. I don't have any, because I used to look back and go, oh, we used to work in his workshop together, and he'd let me hammer stuff, but he didn't treat me the way a father or a parent should treat a child, and I know now why. Um, because then a few years later, my mom got pregnant with my brother, and my dad, that's when he freaked out. According to mom, he said, "How am I going to raise a son? I don't know. I gotta make sure it's perfect, and I do all the right things, and all this." And she said, "Well, why are you worried about that now? You have a child. This is our second child." Well, it was because this one was the one that counted. This was the one he had to make sure he did everything right, and you know, raised a perfect son. And unfortunately, she jumped on his bandwagon because that's how girls and boys were raised in her home. So he was the golden child. I know there's probably people that'll go, "Oh, you poor thing, poo." No, no, no. The horse's mouth. I wish I had it on camera, but I wasn't going to shove a camera in her face when she's telling me something that was obviously painful for her to admit to me. Um, but yeah, I was not an important person. Their goal was to get me out of school, find somebody that'll marry me, go away. That was all they cared about. Never encouraged me to do anything. Anytime I showed interest in sports or music, anytime I showed interest in anything, something that you would encourage your children to go off and do and see if they had any talent, my parents didn't do that. Brian, on the other hand, he was in, any sport he wanted to be in. Was bought multiple cars, was bought clothes. He worked it to his advantage. He was a teenager. I don't fault him for that. I chose not to. I could have played that. Um, I just don't like to do things like that, so I didn't do it. And so it always made me feel weird. That's one of the many differences of my brother and I. But so anyway, my parents, when they were married, he decided, after my brother was born, I don't know how soon he started to cheat on her, but I know he did it or confessed to it to her in, was it 75? I think it was 1975, 74 or 75. And their solution to this, of him coming out to her that he was gay and had been going out to gay bars and getting some, was I got shipped off to Denver, Colorado with my cousin's grandma. And my dad got put into I don't know if it was a halfway house or some kind of mental hospital, in hopes that he would get fixed by my mom's psychiatrist. Um, Spoiler alert, it didn't take. um, But you could always tell that my parents were having problems. My dad would grow a mustache. Every single time my parents split up or had any kind of marital issues or even discussed divorce, Dad had a mustache. In hindsight, Dad had a mustache because Dad was going to gay bars. And Freddie Mercury, Robert Reed. I mean, you look at all those guys in the 80s, they were all sporting that mustache, the porn stash. Um, but yeah, no, that first time. And so I was in Denver, absolutely miserable. No offense to the dead, but oh God. I was there for 3 weeks. And when I got finally shipped back, my brother had gotten taller. My dad looked different. Maybe that was the first time I saw him with a mustache. Um, and he was driving a different car. And I didn't know who he was when he got out of the car with my mom and picked up my brother. I didn't recognize my family. And I think after that, I had a recurring nightmare of waking up in a house with people that weren't my family. Anyway, shortly after that, we moved to Shreveport, Louisiana, allegedly because of my dad's work. It wasn't with the same company. It wasn't like the company he was with transferred him. So now I'm starting to wonder, based on his history, if he didn't make moves on his boss and had to leave town. Because that happened in other places. So then we moved to Shreveport, Louisiana. Um, but what a strange place for a homosexual to move. One of the most bigoted states already. Yeah. We lived there the longest. We lived there 3.5 years. And despite the fact that my parents had horrible fights, my mom left one time to go to Omaha. Poor woman. She got plastic surgery. She got a tummy tuck and she got uh, a boob job and a perm and her ears pierced. And it was kind of sad because Dad didn't want her. But she was raised in a naive Catholic home. She didn't, swear to God, she didn't know any better. They didn't have stuff on TV. Unless you went to like a dirty movie house, you didn't know about things like that. And my mom was a good girl. And she didn't know things. It's too bad. But, there were times down there, oftentimes, as Brian got special treatment. One time I was playing in the road. I was trying to play t-ball and the boys were all playing and I wanted to play. And oftentimes I would get, ostracized because I was a girl. But this one particular day, all the parents were outside and I was standing too close to the batter and I got nailed in the forehead with an aluminum bat to where the lights were going out. I mean, I got clunked. Yeah, granted, I shouldn't have been there, brought it on to myself, but for as hard as I got hit, a good parent would have given me a different reaction. They both just said, "That's what you get. Go lay down." They didn't give a shit. They didn't check on me. In hindsight, I know I had a concussion because I remember how I felt. And then when I got old enough to figure it out, I knew I had a concussion. But at the time, I just laid there and almost died. And another time when my Aunt Pat and Uncle Gail and their kids came down, Pat and Gail, according to legend, have never raised their hand to their children, which is probably why they have trouble today. Um, they had no problem hitting me, but they never hit their own kids. It's like there's a problem here, but so they came down to visit us in Shreveport, and it was a nightmare, according to my mom, because her kids were obnoxious, and therefore Brian and I acted obnoxious because if they're getting away with it, we're going to get away with it. Well, as soon as they were gone, I got the shit kicked out of me. Um, that was probably one of the most violent attacks my mom ever put on me because she used her nails when she came at me and pulled my hair and grabbed me and shoved soap in my mouth to where I had chunks of dial in my teeth. Her fingernails went through the sides of my mouth, so I was spitting out bloody chunks of soap. And I'm sure I had bruises and all kinds of stuff. But it was because I don't know that it was because of what I did or just the fact that my mom had snapped and was taking it out on me, but well, Brendan and I both had called the little girl who lived across the street from us retarded because she had a stutter and made this little girl cry. And when I found out after the fact, after I had gotten the living daylights knocked out of me, I kind of had to live as an 8, 9 year old, whatever I was, and knowing that I had made another little girl cry by calling her this, I went to her house and became friends with her. I would go over to her house all the time and play with her. And the thing that bothered me, because I have very clear memory of this because it bothered me so much, was that her mother was making fun of her stutter. And I just remember just being so horrified by that. Um, yeah, you find out way too young that most adults suck. But yeah, I got the crap kicked out of me a lot. Um, I mean, my brother did too, but not as bad. Also, when we lived in Shreveport, we did a show and tell one day, and my thing was I stood up in front of the class and told jokes about my brother. It was, I guess, my first stand up. I didn't even know what stand up was, but I loved making the boys laugh, and it was pretty awesome. And I just spun these yarns that weren't true about my brother. It was pretty cool. Probably one of my funnest childhood memories. Then we ended up moving to Texas. I don't know why. I assume for the same reasons because when we got to Texas, there was the guy that was going to be my dad's boss. This guy was a drunk, and so it was easy for my dad to be like creepy and make moves on him, I assume. I mean, I know he made moves on him. I just assume he did it when he was inebriated just because it would make sense. And and so we only lived there for 2.5 years. And again, when my mom, well, okay, rewind. When we lived in Shreveport, Louisiana, and my mom had left all of us to go home because her and dad were fighting, at that exact same time, I came down with chickenpox. Um, and so my dad go to work while I had chickenpox, and mom's friend up the street would come down and check on me. My dad bought me orange Gatorade and a snack pack of Doritos. And I'm sure I had chickenpox in my mouth because everything just tasted ick. um, so yeah, mom was gone for that. And I remember we would go to Dominique's and get muffalettas and chef's salads. It's like we have chicken pox, and this is what he's buying us to eat. Worst caregiver ever. Serious guy. I think he was probably hoping he'd kill me one day. But uh, okay, so then we're in Plano, Texas, and we hadn't lived there very long. I think it was the summer after we moved there. We came back. All three of us came back to Omaha. We had had a really bad tornado this one night, and all during it, my parents were fighting. And by the time I was in fifth grade, I had no interest in their fighting. It was so boring because they did it all the time. That anytime they start talking about divorce, I would lighten up and go, "Really, really? Are you? Please." I wanted them to get divorced so bad. I hated my dad's guts because he always took his day out on me. He loved beating the shit out of me. I got it way worse than my brother ever did. He would take that belt off and hit me any chance he'd get because I stood up to him. I was a mouthy little shit, but I just got sick and tired of it. I got so tired of it. And yeah, he was horrible to me. Horrible. He's the reason that I spent most of my childhood with low self esteem. He made me feel so bad about myself that, yeah, garbage person, big time. And I still fought to have a relationship with him up until this year. Um, he pulled away, and I got to thinking, okay, I have been chasing after you and trying to be a good daughter as much as you've been a good dad, which isn't at all. And I'm going way too far ahead, but the guy's garbage. I hope he sees this one day. I know he won't, but wouldn't that be wonderful? You suck. I hope you die a painful death, old man. Anyway, so we're in Texas, and that was horrible. We came back to Omaha that summer, and sure enough, Pat shows up again with her kids, and my mom and Pat fight. I don't know how they ended up getting closer as adults because she hated her Pat so much. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, Pat was a spoiled brat. Still is. Anyway, uh, so yeah, so then Dad. Oh yeah. Oh, and then Pat told Gail that Mom and Pat got in a fight, and Gail called my dad to tell him my mom. He said, "You need to do something about your wife." What a sick. Oh my God. People are so lucky that I didn't know stuff because I've never had a filter and I've never really been on a leash. I've just behaved myself out of respect for, my mother. She's gone now. And notice everybody's gone. Everybody's too afraid. And I don't even care. Um, because I haven't done anything wrong. That's what pisses me off. But I'm going too far ahead again. So yeah, Dad came up and got us and took us home. And I was trying to create a Hallmark moment and, show Dad how much we missed him. And I think Brian at the time was on the same page, and we were trying to get his attention, and he immediately sneered at us or snapped at us or did something horrible. And then we ended up moving. We went back. I think we were there one more year, and then we moved back to Omaha, which I was so happy about, thinking I could, pick up where I left off. Of course, they didn't move anywhere near where I had once lived. So I had to, be 13-year-old creepy all by myself, which, you know, I was 13. I was as socially awkward then as I am now. Who cares? God. So mom and dad, two people who clearly should have gotten divorced based on all of the times he was out doing the town and then coming home to confess his sins because it made him feel better and able to sleep at night. And we would get these extravagant Christmases because he felt guilty. Um, yeah, they built a house. They built this beautiful house on this huge lot. And I just remember thinking, this isn't going to solve anything. Um, I won't even talk about the summer before we moved there because this chick acted out and got caught up in a lot of shit that kind of laid the foundation for the next 4 years of my life. Um, I don't know if I was doing it to distract my parents from each other or if I was trying to get attention because I never did. Um, unless I was getting bad grades. That's the only time I got attention because then they had to hit me or whatever it was they were doing. So yeah, we moved into our new house, and I went to Morton for a year. There was really no point in investing in any friends because then I went to a Catholic high school, which was not where I belonged. I was an outcast from the beginning because I walked in there with family problems. By the time my freshman year ended, I had never been in class. I spent a lot of time at home. My mom had got put into Richard Young, which is a mental facility, because she couldn't handle the thought of losing my dad. She she stuck around because she was devoted to him, and I also think she was scared, but she did love him because I know based on the little bit of stuff that she told me when it was good, it was wonderful. She just loved him so much, which makes zero sense to me because he was an evil, horrible person. But she endured, turned her into an alcoholic, but she endured. And yeah, he moved out. She came home from the hospital and cried and cried and cried, and it broke my heart to see her so much in pain, and there was nothing I could do about it, and I was angry. And because on the same token, he he always played this victim because he couldn't get me to behave anymore. He didn't live under our roof, so he was insignificant in my book. You made my mother cry. Fuck you. I don't need you. And I loved cussing him out. He took us to court to make us go to therapy to so then we would go on visitations with him, um, which was a really bad idea because that's when I found out that he was a gay man. Well, it's 19 was it 1984? I don't think so. I think it was 1985, and I found out during the AIDS thing and not understanding any of it because, of course, such a topic was never allowed to be discussed in my house. And I guess in hindsight, rightly so. However, a little education would have gone a long way in this particular incident. But uh, yeah, I was horrified that I had a gay dad who, you know, destroyed my mother. I mean, it none of it made sense to me. None of it made sense. And So I never went to school. I got put in Richard Young the longest. All Mom, Brian, and I were all in there. I was in there the longest amount of time, which was 6 weeks. Didn't help, but it was nice. I didn't do a lick of homework and got held back. And that's when I switched from Roncalli to Cathedral, where everybody knew that I had been in the loony bin. People, I don't know what it was about that school, other than the fact it was super small and everybody knew everybody's business, and that's just how it was. But yeah, anytime he called the house, if I answered the phone, I verbally assaulted him. Um, any chance I got, I verbally assaulted him and called him every ugly name you could think of. I hated him with every fiber of my being. And then one night, I was waiting for my then boyfriend to come over to pick me up. I don't know what the hell we were going to do. And I knew my mom's friend Annie was coming over too. And so I hear the doorbell ring or something, and I'm waiting for him to come upstairs, and he never does. And I thought, oh, great, Mom has him cornered or something. And so I went downstairs. Nobody's in the house. I was like, okay. And I hear voices on the front porch. So I go out there. He goes flying off the porch and he has a baseball bat. After his last conversation with me, he had decided that he was going to take that bat and, according to him, break my door down. I don't think that was true. I think he wanted to crack my skull. I'm willing to take that to the bank. So then at that time, my then boyfriend showed up, and my mom said, "Get her out of here." I'm screaming at the top of my lungs every obscene word I know. And I'm sure I was swinging at him. And I hope some of them connected. But yeah, I was swinging on him. And so the then boyfriend pulled me out of there. And I said, "Drive me to my Uncle Joe's," because he lived right down the street. And I knew my Uncle Joe hated him. And so we went and got in the car and we flew down there. Joe took off. And I'm like, oh, yes. And according to Joe, he ran. Joe's a runner and ran up the back to the back of the house and around the corner. And he said, I just walked around the corner and they're both sitting there on the porch. And he says, I know, I scared him. And I said, Michaela, is there a problem here? And she said, no, Joe, go home. Well, I had to listen to your mom. And I'm screaming, no, you didn't. So, yeah. And so then boyfriend took me to his house, and I kept calling up my house, and nobody was answering. Finally, she answered, and I could hear talking and laughter in the background. I said, who's there? Oh, your dad and Annie. What the fuck were you doing? Oh, we're just talking. And I'm sure I called her every name under the sun. And I said, I'd like to come home. And she goes, well, not yet. I'm like, uh-huh. So when I finally get home, she informs me that if I play my cards right, I am going to get a new car. I'm like, I want to buy my own car. Yeah, and he's going to pay for half of it. And I'm like, I don't want that. And she said, well, it's done. You just have to graduate high school. I'm like, well, of course, it's been 5 years. So I'm going to graduate. They're going to throw me out. So, um, uh, so yeah, at the time I was working and graduating high school, and he bought us new furniture, a new TV, new land. He bought us all this stuff. So I don't know what she did or said. His little arrangement where he was paying half of my car payment and half of my insurance lasted about 6 months before I snapped and he stopped. Oh, that was the thing. He would make a commitment to me, and if I put one toe out of line, he'd stop doing it. So he didn't realize that even when you're a parent, you don't stop doing things. You don't stop loving your children. He never learned that. But he wanted to stay friends with mom, and mom did not. She struggled with that. She struggled with it because she wasn't able to give my brother and I anything. And she knew the only way that we could get things was to kiss his ass. And yes, that was true. But in the end, it wasn't worth it because when he quit smoking, he took that shit out on me. I have videotape of him just being awful to me around the time he quit smoking. And he always told me, "You need to quit smoking." I am no. If that's what I turn into, no. And I've quit smoking when it matters. I don't have a reason not to die right here, right now. So, fuck, who cares? Let me enjoy life. And if having a cigarette makes me enjoy life, plus it's making my voice very sexy. You have to admit that. Um, but yeah, I tried. It would be back and forth with dad all through my adult life. I did go visit him in Arizona a couple times because he bought me plane tickets and I went. Wasn't worth it in the end because somehow, some way, he always managed to make me feel like a piece of shit. And but I always went back to him. I always thought, well, I have to be the bigger person. I have to. Why? Why did I have to be the bigger person? Because he convinced me that in order for me to be worthy of someone's love, I had to chase after them. Just realized that. Isn't that sad? I think that's why I finally have given up because uh, you can only be humiliated so many times. And I'm so socially backwards that when it comes to meeting anybody new, I don't know how to act. You know, there's only one person in this world that I would give up everything for. It's never going to happen. But if it were to happen right this second, I would flip this computer and go right out that door. It would not take any effort for this man to get me. Um, but it'll never happen. Um, and that's okay. Sometimes opportunities are missed, but you still have your imagination and other things. So yeah, that story about my parents. I mean, there's other stuff in there. It was abusive. They both took it out on me mostly. Brian, yeah, he got knocked around a bit, but not on the level that I did. If I had, when I was a teenager, if I had a pimple on my nose, he would make fun of it. When I was a tiny little skinny bony kid, my feet looked long because I had no meat on my bones. And so he called my feet skis. So I always thought my feet were out of proportion. My nose was too big. I mean, he just made me feel like such a piece of garbage for everything about me. Made fun of my laugh. Um, yeah, just belittled me until I had nothing left. And I know that's why. Even now, if I'm going through something new or I don't feel confident about it, I beat the crap out of myself because isn't that what's supposed to happen? I don't know. But there's other stories I'm going to tell. I just wanted to tell the story about my parents because I was thinking about mom the other day and I realized she truly did love him. And the fact that he always played the victim, you kids would like me and want to have a relationship with me if it wasn't for her. No, no. She, you have destroyed your relationships all by yourself, old man. She never said or did anything that encouraged us. No, And I think it's adorable. You think she had that kind of control over either of us. No, she did not. Did we take her advice? Yeah, often, because she was smart. She's the reason I'm as smart as I am. I'm a hell of a lot smarter than you are. And so, yeah, absolutely. She influenced us in very positive ways. But when it came to you, she really didn't have a whole lot to say because she kind of felt it was self explanatory. So, anyway. So, yeah, if you heard something on here you didn't like or you didn't think it was true or whatever, feel free to drop me a DM or an email or whatever, and I will set you straight. And otherwise, it's just a story. And I have lots of other stories, and I know I'll never actually write them. So I'm just going to do little vlogs about my stories. And that way, if my kids ever want to go back, they can go on here, and there it is. So it's been real. It's been fun. Thank you for watching. Be sure to punch that subscribe and like button. Tell your friends.